Hey everybody, this is Casey Cease with Lucid Books. I'm here with one of our authors, Michelle Bates. Michelle has a interesting story, a story of hope in Christ, of suffering, of struggling, of loss, and it's just a joy to have you here today to share a little bit. She just released her book, Beyond the Shallow: How Suffering Led Me to the Deep End of Grace. Michelle, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. So why don't you go ahead and expound a little bit on your story for us a little bit. Tell us about yourself.
Well, my name is Michelle Bates, and my husband Mike and I have been married for almost 20 years. We have six children. Our oldest is 15, and her youngest would be 8. And I was born and raised in the church, and I have been to church frequently since my parents could take me. And in the church, as I was growing up, I feel like I kept hearing this mantra of do this and Jesus will love you, or follow all the rules and Jesus will take care of you, or pray harder and Jesus will answer you. And when my husband and I had been married for about 4 years, his mom passed away
Mm.
from cancer, and it was a very quick diagnosis, and she passed away just a couple months later. And a month after that, my our oldest daughter was born, and she was born with Down syndrome upon diagnosis. And she was a 31 weeker and spent 6 weeks in the hospital. And I quickly got pregnant again, and our son passed away the day after he was born,
Oh,
our second
wow.
son. So by the time those three really big events had happened, I started questioning God and wondering if he was good. And if he was good, then he wasn't good to me or to my family, and what I had done wrong. I was curious as to what I had done wrong to get the suffering package of the Christian life, I guess. So it was just a really long journey of going back to Sunday school and going back to Sunday school at my kitchen table, kind of on my own terms, and believing in the um, things that were true, believing that Jesus died for me, believing that he rose from the dead and he conquered death, but also figuring out where his goodness lies and what that meant, especially in a culture where things are good because we have things and
Mm.
because we have stuff. And especially when God's goodness isn't based on the things that we have or the people that we have in our life. God's goodness is based on who he is
Mm.
and what he has done for us through his son.
So obviously you've had some loss, and you've had to endure suffering. And this topic is dear to you because it's something you've been living. But what was it that took you on the journey beyond just experiencing it, living it, talking with some friends about it, to actually putting it in book format? What kind of compelled you to that place?
Well, after my second daughter was born, her name is Ellison, and when she was about a year old or so, we had a friend who their daughter passed away from SIDS. And so I really felt like I had to start just writing things down. And so it kind of became a very long process of just writing things down when I had an idea, or writing things down when I had a musing or whatever. And I wasn't really sharing it with anybody. I had started a blog maybe to encourage some people, but it wasn't really out there. And a lot of things were just kind of held up onto the computer for a while to see what would happen with them later on. So, so then an opportunity just presented itself to see if I could try to get more things on paper. And so I did, but I think that the big turning point was when 4 years ago, our son passed away. Our youngest son passed away in an accident in our parking lot. And I really felt like I had to start writing a lot more and just start sharing a lot more. And I think that our story of loss and suffering and struggle, and but also in it a lot of hope and a lot of light because of recognizing what Jesus has done for us and the hope that he gives in spite of everything else that is going on around us.
So let's slow down real quick. So just so I'm capturing
Mm-hmm.
this right, you had your husband's mom passed away. Your daughter was born prematurely with Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
Your next son was born and died the day later. And then
Mm-hmm.
we're saying just 4 years ago, you had another child that died.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've had 6 children, and so um, after Eli, our second son, who passed away after the day he was born, we had Ellison, and then we had a miscarriage after that, and
Mm,
then we had our youngest, Boston, and he was born in February of
mm,
2011. So he passed away when he was 4.
wow. I'm so sorry.
Mm.
Yeah. So, what are some common myths or misunderstandings surrounding suffering for the Christian? I mean, you did all the
For the
study and
Christian.
and
Yeah.
and you had the right answers going into it, but now that
Hmm.
you've endured such substantial loss, what are some of the common myths or misunderstandings about
Well,
that?
I think one of the things that I had the impression from especially like high school, college years, early adult years. I think that I was given this impression, I guess, of if we obey and follow Jesus or ask him into our heart, then he's going to bless us and we're going to have our family and we're going to have our friends and we're going to have the house, the car, the job, whatever. And not really because of anything that we have done, but because we're his, he's going to bless us and life is going to be okay. Like we may have suffering, like some financial struggles or um, like the house that we wanted, we couldn't get or whatever. But for the most part, things will be okay. And I think that that is a common belief in the church, but I really don't think that that's the truth of the Bible. And I don't think that that's what Jesus told us. Because in John um, 16, he says, don't worry, like you're going to have struggles and you're going to have tribulations and it's going to be hard. But don't forget, I have conquered the world.
Hmm.
And so that's something that I feel like we have missed in the church, just especially with prosperity theology being a popular thing. And I think that I thought that if somebody is suffering, then they did something wrong, or if somebody is suffering, then God is punishing for some it, but and God is punishing them for something that they've done, and that's not the case. You know, we're suffering because we're living. We're suffering
Right.
because we live in a fallen world. We're suffering because Jesus did promise that it was going to happen, but he didn't say that he was going to leave us alone to take care of it all by ourselves.
Yeah.
He promised that he would be there. He promised that he's already conquered the world and and that this isn't all that there is.
Yeah. Hmm. So then, why should someone take the time to read your book, Michelle?
Well, I think that people should take the time to read it because I think that first the um, that the story is all about Jesus. The story points back to Jesus. I hope that what people see is that we love Jesus a lot and that we have also seen a lot of suffering and that we have also seen that his goodness is not based on the things that we have, but it's based on what he has done. And that the book is about that kind of struggle, like that tension of um, the good things that we see around here, and that the goodness is not really in what we see, but rather in who Jesus is.
Hmm.
And that is what I truly believe is the hope of the gospel and the hope of Jesus and the hope of that this world is not all that there is.
That's great. So now that you've been through all this, you've had all the tried answers, you've all the cliches I'm sure thrown at you. How can we love others who are suffering? What are some practical ways?
I think that loving others well during their suffering is being a constant companion. And I think that people need to believe and also understand that when we are walking the road with people who have suffered a great loss, I mean, even if it is somebody who has passed away, or if it's somebody who has a child diagnosed with a disability, or if it's somebody who is constantly in financial strain or suffering because of um, hurt from a relationship or whatever. I mean, I feel like suffering is a very broad topic, but I really think that we need to understand as a community that walking with others and bearing one another's burdens is not simply um, okay, well, I'll bring you a meal or I'll give you a few gift cards. It's a marathon, right? Like if we're going to commit to be with our friends and say, hey, I'm here for you, then it's a marathon and we're in it for the long haul and we're there to walk alongside them in the good, the bad, and the ugly. And really, a lot of suffering is much more ugly and messy than it is nice and pretty.
Yeah, that's so true. So, if an organization wanted or church wanted to bring you out to talk, to speak with their group, what would you like to talk about with them? Obviously, you've endured and you share your story, but what specifically would you be passionate to share with the group?
I would really like to talk about Jesus because it's my favorite thing to talk about. But I would really love to talk about how, I mean, a few things, but really how he is good, how he has, how our blessings in him are much more great than anything else that is around us. But also our identity, what our identity is in him, because so many times I just felt like, man, I'm the griever, I'm the sufferer. That's my identity. I'm the one who's sad or whatever. But that's not really the case. Like our identity, even in our suffering and in our grief, is that we are his child and that he is taking care of us and that we are his and he's never going to leave us and he's never going to let us go, no matter how hard things get for us here on earth or how far, or even how we try to run away when things are hard. But he is constantly with us all the time.
That's so good. So, hey, how can people catch up with you and follow up? Where can they find your books, all that good stuff?
I have a website, michellebates.org, and also on Facebook, Michelle Bates, and on Amazon.
Nice. Well, Michelle, thanks so much for
Yeah,
taking some time to visit with us. And friends that are watching this, I encourage you to pick up Michelle's book and invite her out to speak. The book's called Beyond the Shallow: How Suffering Led Me to the Deep End of Grace. Michelle, thanks so much for stopping by.
thanks for having me. It was fun.